Russia remains steadfast in its 2025 strategy, even as its ground offensives falter against Ukraine's robust resistance. Russian airstrikes, employing an unprecedented number of missiles and drones, have relentlessly targeted Ukraine, inflicting severe casualties and infrastructure damage. However, on September 27, Russia overstepped by launching an airstrike on Kyiv. Conducted at dawn, this attack not only hit military targets, but also heavily damaged civilian areas, forcing Ukraine to abandon a purely defensive stance. In response, Ukraine opted for a bold counterstrike. Before diving into today's main story, comment 1 if you support Ukraine, 2 if you support Russia, or 3 if you're neutral. Now, let's get into the details of today's report. Ukraine's retaliation was swift and unrelenting, plunging the Russian border city of Belgorod into widespread blackouts. According to Euromaidan Press on September 29, Ukraine launched a fierce assault on the city at dawn on September 28, precisely targeting critical energy infrastructure. This crippled Belgorod's operations and sent a clear message to Russia. More details on the destroyed targets will follow, but first the basics. Ukraine employed long-range weapons, possibly not of its own manufacture, to strike 2 key energy facilities in Belgorod, a thermal power plant and a substation.
Пиздец, просто пиздец.
The thermal power plant, known as TETS-4, is a modern facility upgraded in 2007 with a Siemens SGT-800 gas turbine, generating 45 megawatts of electricity and 60 megawatts of heat, supplying roughly 36.3% of Belgorod's central and northern districts' energy needs. Both facilities are vital for the city's power grid. The attack's impact was immediate, with Euromaidan Press reporting widespread power outages across Belgorod. Water supply systems in some areas also failed due to the blackouts, leaving thousands of residents grappling with daily hardships. Belgorod's governor, Vyacheslav Gladkov, confirmed the attack, as reported by Kyiv Post. Governor Gladkov stated that enemy missiles struck a Belgorod power plant, acknowledging widespread outages. He emphasized that hospitals and police stations were forced to rely on backup generators, and that water supplies to some residents were disrupted. His focus on civilian impacts suggests an intent to amplify the attack's effects for propaganda, framing Ukraine as targeting civilians, despite no reported casualties, per Kyiv Post. Russia often cites drone debris to downplay Ukraine's successful strikes. Yet this time, Russia openly acknowledged the Belgorod attack. Why? The strike directly affected Russian civilians, with power and water disruptions impacting thousands, though no deaths or injuries were reported. Russia publicized the attack to paint Ukraine as a terrorist force, leveraging civilian inconvenience for propaganda. This isn't speculation. It's deliberate propaganda. Russia's foreign ministry maintains an online list of what it calls terrorist crimes by the Kyiv regime, detailing actions it labels as terrorism, primarily Ukraine's retaliatory strikes following Russian bombardments. Regularly updated, the list emphasizes attacks on civilian infrastructure, ignoring that Ukraine's strikes target strategic assets supporting Russia's war effort. From Russia's perspective, Ukraine has no right to counterattack. When Ukraine's strikes affect civilians, Russia seizes the opportunity to vilify Ukraine as the aggressor in a conflict Russia initiated. This tactic persists even without civilian deaths, as in Belgorod, revealing a transparent effort to shape global opinion. Most nations outside Russia see through this narrative.
If Ukraine didn't target civilians, unlike Russia's frequent practice, what did they hit in Belgorod? Kyiv Post reports geolocated footage showing at least 5 direct hits on TETS 4. The facility, responsible for power generation, erupted in flames post-attack. Debris and explosions damaged critical components, including fuel tanks, supply systems, turbines, and the substation mentioned earlier.
Euromaidan Press notes that TETS 4, rebuilt in 2007 with a modern Siemens SGT-800 gas turbine, generates significant heat and power, meeting 36.3% of Belgorod's energy demands. This turbine produces 45 megawatts of electricity and 60 megawatts of heat, making TETS 4 a critical asset not only for civilians but also for Russian military logistics near the border. Ukraine didn't destroy an ordinary plant, but a facility powering over a third of a Russian city just 25 miles from Ukraine. Video footage shared by YouTube channel Canal 13 shows multiple angles of the damaged TETS 4, with thick black smoke rising. Some clips capture intense fires within the facility, which Russia confirmed as Ukraine's doing. Telegram channel Astra also posted reports of widespread outages and water shortages in Belgorod, corroborating the disruptions. Russia couldn't deny the events of September 27-28, as the attack's scale affected hundreds, if not thousands, of Belgorod residents left without power or water. Russia couldn't conceal this. And worse, the attack likely wasn't solely drone-based. Ukraine used a different weapon, the American-made M31 GMLRS missile, a precision-guided munition with a 200-pound warhead, a 100-mile range, and accuracy within 16 feet thanks to GPS/INS guidance. These missiles were launched from HIMARS systems, with Ukraine possessing about 40 units as of May 2025, or M270 MLRS systems with around 10 in service. More on this later, but Ukraine's choice of Belgorod wasn't random. The strike retaliated for Russia's actions hours earlier, signaling to President Vladimir Putin that attacks on Ukrainian cities would prompt stronger responses targeting Russian ones. Hours before Ukraine's Belgorod strike, Russia launched a massive 2025 assault on Ukraine, per Kyiv Independent on September 28th. A nearly 12-hour drone and missile barrage targeted multiple regions, using nearly 500 drones and over 40 missiles. The attack, hitting cities including Kyiv, killed at least 4 and injured 70, including a 12-year-old girl who died. Starting at 1:45 a.m. local time, 2 95 MS bombers from Olenia Air Base in Murmansk launched K-101 cruise missiles with a 1,700-mile range and 880-pound warheads. 40 minutes later, MiG-31K jets from Engels Air Base fired K-47M2 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, reaching Mach 10 with a 1,200-mile range, triggering nationwide air raid alerts. The attack damaged or destroyed 20 sites, including a 5-story building in Kyiv, affecting 7 districts, per Kyiv Independent. Russia deployed 5 Tu-95 bombers from Olenia at 1:45 a.m., followed by MiG-31K jets from Engels, with additional Tu-95s from Engels, striking Ukraine from multiple directions with clear success. Euromaidan Press reported Russia also targeted Zaporizhzhia, Sumy, and Khmelnytsky, causing severe damage to energy and civilian infrastructure. Power plants and water systems were hit, disrupting tens of thousands. Some Russian missiles and drones, including Caliber, K-101, K-55, and hundreds of Gerbera and Giran Shahed-style drones, breached Ukraine's air defenses, striking residential buildings and vehicles. Specifically, Kaliber missiles with a 930 to 1,550-mile range and 990-pound warheads were launched from Black Sea warships, while Geran-2 Shahed-136 drones carrying 110-pound warheads with a 1,200-mile range overwhelmed Ukraine's defenses. Unlike Russia's indiscriminate strikes, Ukraine's Belgorod attack targeted a legitimate military asset. Tets-4 supports Russian military logistics near the border, just 25 miles from Ukraine, a staging point for past Russian offensives, like in Kursk in August 2024.
Пиздец, просто пиздец.
Crucially, no civilians were harmed in Belgorod. If there were, Russia would have publicized it to bolster its Ukraine as terrorist narrative. Yet, Russia's September 28 airstrike killed Ukrainian civilians, consistent with its pattern. Per Statista, citing the UN Human Rights Office, Russia's invasion has caused 13,883 civilian deaths and 35,548 injuries by July 31, 2025. Including 726 children killed and 2,234 injured, with numbers rising post-September 28. Russia's attacks are indiscriminate, with missiles and drones targeting civilians to sow chaos and terror. Ukraine, however, strikes precisely, hitting legitimate targets to disrupt Putin's war machine, not to terrorize, despite Russia's propaganda. Ukraine couldn't ignore Russia's latest assault. A day before Russia's massive drone and missile barrage, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a stern warning on September 27 in Kyiv. If they threaten blackouts in Ukraine's capital, the Kremlin should know Moscow will face blackouts. While Ukraine partially fulfilled this by targeting Belgorod, the message was clear. Continued attacks on Kyiv could bring retaliation to Moscow. Calling these Ukraine's missiles may be inaccurate. For Belgorod, Ukraine didn't use long-range drones, effective against oil refineries in August and September, but insufficient for destroying a power plant. Ukraine used the US-made M31 GMLRS, a precision-guided rocket with a 200-pound warhead and 100-mile range, per Kyiv Post. With GPS/INS guidance and under 16-foot accuracy, it's launched from HIMARS or M27 MLRS systems in Ukraine's arsenal. Ukraine has the launchers needed, with about 40 HIMARS and 10 M2070 MLRS systems as of May 2025. The M31 used was likely an upgraded variant, capable of deeper strikes into Russia, unlike earlier short-range versions, enabling hits on Belgorod and potentially Kursk. The use of M31 GMLRS marks a strategic shift for Ukraine, moving from cheap UAVs to advanced Western-supplied weapons, reflecting a US policy change allowing deeper strikes into Russia. This signals escalating Western support for Ukraine's retaliation. Comment 1 for Ukraine, 2 for Russia, or 3 for neutral.